I've had the enormous privilege in the last about 20 years to at least once a year be able to direct a Shakespeare comedy. It's either been A Midsummer Night's Dream or it's been As You Like It. And there are real similarities between Twelfth Night and As You Like It and Don Gil. And about 15 years ago, I started getting very interested in how the plays were originally performed, because I saw lots of Shakespeare's that I didn't think worked, but at some point they must have worked. So I started doing some research for myself into what is called original practice, or OP. And a lot of those things I have brought with me to this production, with the question, might they work on a play that was written in the same year as Shakespeare's Tempest, which was his last play, was written? So there's a real synchronicity here. And then you asked, I think, what have I managed to actually put into practice? What actually works of bringing Shakespeare to Tirso? And there are definitely things that do work. And it has made me, of course, immensely curious about whether any of these Spanish playwrights had anything to do with the English playwrights when drama altogether, plays, were beginning to be created. We have to think, in the time that Shakespeare wrote his plays, there had only been plays for 20 years. It's like imagining the first play today was written in the year 2000 or 2005. It's a very strange thing to try to imagine for those people who were living in those times anyway. And I did discover that a lot worked, but I discovered right at the end that this is a 3-act play, and Shakespeare writes 5-act plays, and they are different. And they have their own different structure, they have their own different rhythm. And here I'll use a word that perhaps is not so familiar, I don't know, but they breathe differently. They just work differently. And so I had to make a small change right at the end, and we'll see whether that addresses the issue that I discovered when we started to do run-throughs. Well, it's only basically in this year, not in rehearsals before Christmas, that I began to discover what could possibly justify this way of performing the play. Because the first thing that happened was I had an image of 3 people performing the play, performing the role of Doña Juana. And that was also supported by the fact that this is the young company that I'm working with. There are 5 women and 6 men, and I really wanted to try to make it an ensemble piece. And if I hadn't done that, it would be very much not an ensemble piece. There would be women who would have only just a few lines, and one of the women would have had this big role of Doña Juana. But the more we engaged with thinking, well, theatre makes things visible. It makes things visible and audible. And rather than that one person is changing all the time, it felt like give each of these aspects of Doña Juana a chance to be really present on the stage. In retrospect, I can also say it connects very well with something that was happening. I mean, if you like, we would talk about this in England as the Renaissance. It's the second Renaissance, 1550 to 1600, 1620. It's the Renaissance of the word, and it's the birth. It's the time when the individuality of characters was born. The fact that there is such a thing as an individuality was becoming to be understood amongst the people of the time. This has been recognized by British and American researchers into Shakespeare, who say that we really only have a sense of what a human individuality is through the plays of Shakespeare, because the characters are so three-dimensional. And that, in a way, is the principle that I've tried to apply here, that Juana is a true individuality who has these aspects of her, Don Gil and Doña Elvira, who she needs to engage to win her man back. Simple as that. So what we're doing is we're physicalizing something that actually lives in every human being today, but hoping that it actually even makes the very complex, the incredibly complex story of Don Gil more understandable. That in some way is the goal for this. You will be the judge of whether it works or not. You know, a lot of my life has been working with young actors, either with actors in training or with postgraduate actors, as I would call this young company. You know, they've done their 3-year training, and this is a kind of postgraduate training. They all come from very different backgrounds, and the job is to find out, you know, how to connect with them, how to help them to play the characters in the best way possible. With some it works instantaneously, with others it takes longer. With others you probably say, well, have I really been able to help or not to get them to the place where they can embody these extraordinary characters that Tirso has created. Those are probably the 3 perspectives. I hope I think we've had found a way of rehearsing that they have had time and space to bring in their own contributions to the creation of the role. That's very much my intention, to hand the work over to the young actors. So you may see some actors performing in one way, some performing in a different way. You know, in 8 weeks of rehearsal, it's a tall order to get them all sort of under one umbrella, is how I would describe it. So again, you will be the judge of whether it works or not. It's been an amazing team to work with, I must say. You know, all round the circle, it's just been positive and creative. I mean, I try to work in that way, that we don't say what's not working, but how can we make what is working stronger or clearer or develop it further. I mean, it's also been about learning to speak each other's language, because we all come from a different background. I do have a reasonable amount of experience of working with what are called the backstage arts, you know, the set, the costumes, the lighting, the props, etc. Having worked very closely with somebody who used to work for the Royal Shakespeare Company in creating a book about her work. So it is something that is very dear to my heart, that the whole thing, the production is a wholeness, that all the different arts are contributing to the whole, to whether the whole works or not. And we have some gloriously exotic comedic costumes. We have a very simple, flexible set. We have challenging lighting for the poor lighters because of all of what are called, in Spanish, the aparte, as we call them, the asides in the text, which are going to be lit in a very particular way. There have been lots of challenges, but so far we're getting through. We're coming to the end. And I've been very happy to be working with each and every one of the people who were recommended to me by Luis Omar to take up the work with over these last 9 months.